Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Tech Dialogue. Whether you're new here or whether you are a returning listener or viewer, everybody is welcome here at the Tech Dialogue. And in this episode, I wanted to speak about some recent news from Cisco, and it's in relation to the Cisco Security certifications, more specifically the CCNP Security and the CCIE Security. There's just been some announcements on some changes to what is expected when looking at taking those exams, and I really wanted to share that news with our listeners and viewers today and just look at the information in a little bit more detail to see what it means for you and anybody that's maybe looking at taking these certification exams in the near future. But before we get into that, I just wanted to spend a few minutes just letting you know what I've kind of been up to in the few months where we've not really been getting on these podcasts and catching up. So it's been a few months since we did the last podcast or video cast, however you listen or watch, and it's been a busy few months for me. I've been really busy, focused on work. I've been busy with family, and I've also been busy actually working towards other certifications myself as well. So I've been working on, I think in January, I worked on the ISC Squared certified in cybersecurity. So those that follow me on YouTube and my website have probably seen that I passed that certified in security ISC Squared exam back, I think, end of January, beginning of February, sometime around then. Now, that was or is an entry-level cybersecurity certification, and I really wanted to do that exam because of a number of reasons, really. So the first one was, the exam is currently still free, and the content to study for that exam, the last time I checked, was also free as well. And I also wanted to do that because I also get a lot of questions from people reaching out to me across social media asking about certifications and which certifications are best for them, or where should they start if they're looking at getting into cybersecurity. And when ISC Squared announced the certified in cybersecurity, I thought it'd probably be a good certification for people that are new to the industry more so than anything, or pivoting into cybersecurity, could look at getting and using the knowledge gained from that to further themselves in cybersecurity. So I really wanted to do the exam just to get a feel for it so that I could share my feedback with everybody that's been asking me and everybody that's maybe curious about the exam as well. So if you are one of those and you've not yet seen, head over to my YouTube channel, Network Wizkid, and you will see a couple of videos around the ISC Squared certified in cybersecurity, giving you information on some of the domains that map to the CISSP if you're looking at going down that route at a later time, and also how I actually passed that exam as well, for those that are curious, and the resources that I used to do that as well. So do go ahead and check that out. So yeah, I've been busy with that, and off the back of that, I was actually studying for the CISSP from ISC Squared. So for those that are not familiar, it's a more advanced certification from ISC Squared. It's pretty much up there as a top-notch certification for industry cybersecurity professionals. And I was studying for that up until, I would say, the back end of February. And at the time, because I'm planning for a wedding next year, at the time, my company would not actually pay for the CISSP, and it's not a cheap certification. It's about £700, just over £700, and so in dollars that's around maybe $900 or so. So it's a lot of money to be forking out for a certification, and especially when I have a wedding to be saving up for and paying for, it wasn't something that I was looking at parting my money with straight away. So I decided to kind of stop studying for the CISSP and put that on the back burner because I wasn't too... The thing with me is when I start doing certifications or working towards certifications, I become invested in those certifications, and I'm sure most other people do that have worked towards certifications as well. And my kind of viewpoint is that if I'm paying for a particular certification and one that is expensive, is as expensive as the CISSP, I am really wanting to pass that certification the first time. And if I don't pass that certification the first time, and it's always a possibility, then you've got two options. You either do it again and pay for it again, or you decide to drop it and not do it again. And as I said, I get invested with certifications. So if I'm paying for that certification, that's £700 once, and I fail the exam, then I am invested, which means I am going to then have to pay again to retake that certification. So I was kind of looking at it from a standpoint of, well, if I don't pass the CISSP the first time, then I'm gonna have to pay for it again. So ultimately I'm looking at around £1,400, which is a lot of money to have 2 attempts at a certification, especially when your company's not paying for it. Nevertheless, a few weeks ago, ISC Squared rather announced a offer where you could pretty much take a number of their exams. So you select one, so in my case, select the CISSP, and then I could basically do the exam again, not for free, but for a slightly cheaper cost if I failed the first time. So it was, for me, a safety net, and I decided to pick up the books again and restart studying for the CISSP with the intention of, passing the first time. But with that offer that ISC Squared were offering, I decided to pay. I think it worked out at, with the conversion fees, etc., it worked out nearly £800, so close to probably $1,000 to take advantage of this offer, which was essentially being able to sit the exam, the CISSP, the first time within a certain time frame. So my first attempt is actually next month, less than a month actually away. So I've been really busy doing that. And then if I don't pass on that first attempt, then I effectively get the second chance for around £80, I think it was. So for me, that's a really good deal. So I really get the opportunity, if I need it, to do it again for next to nothing. So I decided to slide a little bit of money out of the wedding savings, with the intention of putting it back, of course, and with the intention of passing, and attempt to go for this CISSP certification, because it's something that I've really wanted to do for a while, and I started it in January and really wanted to get this certification out of the way so that I can focus on other certifications that I have in mind that I plan on doing hopefully this year, depending on how this CISSP goes. And also, like I said, the CCIE is sort of world renowned in the cybersecurity industry. So, once I have that certification, it kind of solidifies, if you like, my knowledge within that space a little bit more, and it's something that I can be proud about, essentially. So that's what I've been up to as of late. So I've really been busy doing all that stuff. There's been some other stuff in the background that I've been doing in terms of trying to work on other initiatives. For those that I've maybe seen and not seen, I also totally revamped my website, networkwizkid.com, with the intention of not just having it now as a website where people can go and read my articles and configuration guides and knowledge base, etc. I really wanted it to be a place where we can offer training to individuals on different subjects that are looking at getting into maybe cybersecurity or even different fields. I think the idea is to have different training packages available that people can purchase for a slightly lower cost than these more commercial sites, and with that content delivered by independent professionals or content creators such as myself, in the industry, and with that knowledge already, hopefully we can kind of put together that content and deliver that content at a slightly lower price because we're doing it independently as well to those that are interested. So I am working on content for my website as well, so training content focused on different technologies, Cisco technologies, etc. So do keep a lookout for that. But I have really been consumed in doing that as well. But right now, like I say, my sole focus is the CISSP. So that's kind of what I've been up to, and that's kind of why things haven't been fluid in terms of being able to deliver these. But I'm still here. Don't worry about that. I'm not going nowhere. So do keep checking back for these new episodes. Now, with that said, I wanted to, and like I say, I am usually studying the CISSP content. I've got these practice tests here, and I've got books in front of me, etc. So I am usually doing this now in an evening, but I really wanted to jump on this episode today just to speak to you about some exciting news from Cisco that's recently been announced. And for those that follow Cisco certifications, you may have seen late last year, early this year, that there was a new roadmap for certifications released. And that roadmap really looked at how Cisco reviews the certifications, how they announce changes, and how they publish, or when they publish those changes that they announced. And we've not really seen this done before, and I really like the way that Cisco are being transparent now in delivering these updates as well as announcing new changes. And speaking of changes, we've just got news that the Cisco Security certifications are now going to change, and there's a few different dates that we're going to look at as well. So this is a purpose. This episode, I want to go through this. I want to kind of share my view on it and have a look at the changes and what it actually means for those that are pursuing these certifications. Maybe you're pursuing these certifications on the current versions now. Maybe you've just started. Is it worth continuing the journey, or are you going to wait until the new versions come out before you start to look at these certifications? Let's take a look at this. So for this particular episode, if you are listening, that's great. But if you are watching on the video, then it's probably going to be more beneficial to you, because we are going to be taking a look at the roadmap, the blueprint changes, and a few other bits and pieces as well. So I might break this into a couple of episodes because there's quite a lot to get through, but let's see how we get on. So on the Cisco's Learning Network, this is where everything's just kind of been announced with regards to the security certifications. So just before we kind of dive into it, I just want to take a quick look at this roadmap that you can see here on the screen. And for those that are listening on the podcast, we're essentially looking at the Cisco's release of the roadmap in terms of how they review changes to certifications, how they announce the blueprint changes, and when they publish those changes. So the announcements usually come 3 to 6 months in advance once they've been reviewed, and once those announcements have been made, the announcements will effectively or go into effect for each of the exams between 3 to 6 months after the publication of the blueprint. So we're at the stage now, if we actually look at this roadmap here, we can see that in Q3, February to April, and if we look at Security and Enterprise, we can see that we had the blueprint changes. Actually, this is what the episode's about. So the blueprint changes are being announced now. So we are between 3 to 6 months now before these changes that we're going to look at today actually take effect. So this is where we are now. We're in Q3, February to April 2023. If we look further down now, we on the bottom half of the time scale, if you like, we can see Security and Enterprise Q2 November to January 2023. So we can see the colors highlighted. So this is when another review is going to take place of these exams, and we can also see further on down the line. This is actually the review that got taken actually on the security and enterprise certifications between November last year and January 2023 this year. I'm kind of losing track of time, you know. So this is sort of the review that took place, and now we're on the February to April announcement here. So the next phase for us is actually, if we come back to the bottom and we look at Q4 between May to July 2023, this is when we're actually going to see the publishing of the updated exam, so based on the blueprint changes. And that timeline carries on, so you can also see there, if we just look on here, we can also see that we have we've got some more announcements in February to April 2024. We've got the review that actually takes place here as well. So the process just continues essentially. So what's changing? Well, we've got a lot here, and there's some great news as well that I need to share with you. So we've actually got a new certification exam under the CCNP Security that we can take as well, and this is a cloud-focused certification. So we can see it's the 300-740 SCAZT version 1.0. We can see that the other ones are version 1.1 because these are not new exams. These are just revisions of the previous exams that will be coming into effect. So just before we jump into the cloud one and take a little bit of a look at that one, we can see that the first date to test for the CCNP core exam is going to be on July the 20th, 2023. So we've got a few months, as the roadmap suggests, to be able to continue on the current track if you are currently working on the existing certification, or if you are not yet working on the security certifications, you know, you can actually start working on it now and maybe look at the blueprint revisions that are going to come into effect, and then decide whether to continue learning certain things or to drop certain things as well. So all of these exams change apart from the new one, which is now going to come into effect, or the first time to test for the new cloud. The cloud security certification will be November the 20th, 2023. So there's still a bit of time for that one yet, but the updates or the revisions to the existing ones will be starting on July 20th, 2023. That's with the exception of the practical CCIE Security exam, and the first date to test on that will be October 20th, 2023. And you can see there that this is now going up to version 6.1 of the CCIE Security Lab exam. So let's just take a look at if we just open the new exam, let's just take a look at the blueprint. and take a look at what this actually entails. So we can see that the exam's called Designing and Implementing Secure Cloud Access for Users and Endpoints version 1. And it says that the Designing and Implementing Secure Cloud Access for Users and Endpoints version 1 is a 90-minute exam associated with the CCNP Security. So this exam will be one of the exams that you can take alongside the core exam to be able to get your CCNP certification once this is released. So this is focused on designing and implementing cloud security architecture, and it's looking at user and device security, network and cloud security, application and data security, visibility and assurance, and threat response. So this tells me straight away, working at Cisco and knowing Cisco technologies, we're going to be focusing a lot on Cisco's cloud technologies, such as Cisco Umbrella. There might be some relation in there to the other technologies, such as Duo, when we talk about user and device security. And if we quickly look at some of the blueprint topics, we can see that we have under 1.0, we've got cloud security architecture. So we're looking at threat intelligence, security operation tool sets, user and device security, network security on the cloud edge and on premises, workloads, applications, data security, and a bunch of other stuff. This is really cool because this is really up to date and looking at cloud security in the context of the latest and greatest. So we're looking at, we've got a topic or a blueprint topic 1.2.c, which is looking at SASE integrations. We've got Zero Trust Network Access, or ZTNA. We've got Cisco SecureX, so you'll also be expected to know a little bit about SecureX as well. We've got a topic around looking at security frameworks, so you're looking at NIST, CISA, DISA. We've got a topic around safe architectural framework, so that's Cisco's safe architectures or Cisco safe framework, which is very important, especially if you're looking at taking that CCIE Security Lab exam. We've got user and device security. So this is, for me, an interesting one, especially given that I work in this particular area at the moment. So we'll be looking at SAML. We're looking at single sign-on, OIDC. So these are different authentication methods, and looking at identity providers. So you'll be looking at multi-factor authentication for users and devices. We've got device authentication using certificates. We've got posturing. So this tells me there might actually be some Duo technology or some reference to Duo in this this exam, which is very exciting in my view. And these are, as I said, these are the things that I feel like are very relevant at the moment. So I really think that anybody that's looking at or focusing on Cisco technologies or cybersecurity in general, I think when you get to the CCNP security level, this is going to be a good certification to go through and take. And I probably might look at doing this certification myself as well. Then we get on to network and cloud security. So straight away, this is telling me that it's going to be referencing Cisco Umbrella. And we've got a few different features here that Cisco Umbrella offers. So we've got the web application firewall. We've got URL filtering, so the web layer and DNS layer. We've got advanced app control, reverse proxy. We've got some really good stuff going on here. We've got reference actually to Office 365, Workday, and Salesforce. So determine security policies for endpoints to permit access to SaaS-based applications. We've got reference to SSE, which again is another architecture, if you like, that is very relevant today. So SSE, you might hear it referred to, or Security Service Edge. We've got reference to the secure firewall. So you'll notice as well that it's not called, they've updated the names as well for the actual technologies as well. So where this used to probably say, or would have said, firepower, Cisco Firepower, it's actually now referring to the new name. So Cisco Secure Firewall, FTD and ASA. And you can see that reference to them there. We've got reference to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. We've got XDR. So this is another big movement, if you like, at the moment, and this is looking at Cisco XDR as well. So this is looking at the latest solutions on offer right now, and this is probably why it's not going to be available to test until the back end of 2023. We've got telemetry, network analytics, cloud analytics. There's a lot going on here. And then we've got threat response as well, which is probably going to be looking at things like SecureX as well. And then you can see we've got reference to Cisco Secure Workload. So for those that are looking at maybe a Cisco cloud related certification, this is really exciting, especially from a security standpoint. And you're also going to have the opportunity to really learn about some of Cisco's latest and greatest technology, and also the technology that's up and coming and actually playing a major part in the world today. So if you are looking at maybe understanding some of these technologies a little bit more, then this is really a good certification. And also if you're looking at furthering your career, particularly with working with Cisco solutions and cloud technology and security in the cloud, then this could be also a good certification for you to take as well. So that's the blueprint for that, and I'm sure as time goes on, more will be more information will be released about this. We can see that we've actually got reference to Duo, Umbrella and Cisco Secure Workload there. So Duo is going to be included with this, which is interesting. So for those that are maybe going to be looking at this certification and maybe want to get an head start, do check out my videos on my YouTube channel at Network Wizkid, because there is quite a lot of videos there related to some of this stuff already, especially around Duo. And just to let you in on a little secret, I am actually working on some Cisco Umbrella training at the moment for my website. So do take a look out for that, because that Umbrella training might actually help when it comes to learning some of these topics that are in this blueprint as well. So do keep a lookout for that on my website. So back to the exam changes. So as I said, we're probably going to have to split this up into a couple of parts, because you can see we've got updates to all these different concentration exams as well as the core exams. And to do that and really go through the changes, I really want to take some time with you guys to go through those changes and identify, whether I feel like it's a positive or a move in the right direction, and what I feel like people should be doing if they are currently working on version 1 of these exams at the moment. Because really, we're coming to what we're on. So we're on actually the 20th of April now. So we're coming to the end of April. So we haven't really got a lot of time to be working on these certifications in the current form as well, especially if you're new to some of these areas. You might take a little bit longer to actually learn the content and then to take these exams. But don't let that deter you from getting a head start, or at least working on the current versions, because who knows, you might be able to pass. If you are looking at passing these exams before they change the version, you might be able to get that done before they change the version. I remember back in slightly older times when it was still the CCIE Security written and then the CCNP Security were totally separate. I remember trying to rush taking the CCIE Security written exam before the new changes come into effect, and I just couldn't get it. And I think part of me was, or part of the reason why, was because I was rushing just to get that certification before the changes come into effect. But in essence, it didn't really help, because when the changes actually came into effect and the newer technologies and the newer blueprint came into play, I actually passed the written, if you like, the first time, the CCNP Security slash IE written the first time once that change come into effect. So it actually benefited me a lot better to, maybe wait. So I guess my message is, don't just try to rush these certifications because you're scared of the changes that might be coming to effect. Because yes, you might have put a lot of work into the certifications already, but these changes are incremental. They're not going to be full change to the whole blueprint, and we'll see that as we get through that each of the blueprints. But what we are going to focus on today is the CCIE Security version 6.1 lab exam and the blueprint, and see what's changed in that as well. Now, so we're still on 6.0 because the change doesn't come into effect until October, but I took the CCIE Security Lab exam twice last year. I actually spent pretty much a whole year trying to study and pass the lab exam. And while I still haven't passed it, I will certainly be returning to attempt the exam again. As I said, right now I'm focusing on the CISSP. So I think by the time I actually get my brain working again and in that sort of flow for the CCIE Security Lab, I'm probably going to be looking at the version 6.1. So I'm probably going to have to change a few things in my lab and take the newer version. But I took 6.0 twice. Second time I did better than the first time, and obviously while I'm not going to divulge all that information, what we are going to do is we're going to take a look at the release notes today, and we're going to take a look at some of the changes. So if we take a look at the CCIE Security Lab exam revision 6.1 blueprint, or the revisions that have taken place, we've basically got a summary of why these changes are taking place, and it's essentially because the world of technology is rapidly and very quickly evolving, and Cisco really want to keep their exams relevant. And in my opinion, that's a really good thing, because it ensures that those looking to get those Cisco certifications are really staying up to date and have the skills that are required for the latest and greatest that Cisco has to offer as well. So in my eyes, it makes you more marketable as well, because you don't want to be working on technology from any vendor that may be 5-6 years old, or maybe end of life has been announced for certain versions, etc. And organizations that you're working for are moving or already have newer versions, because it's not really going to benefit you, because as these new versions come out and as new technology comes out, things change, UIs change, etc. So it's really advantageous for you to be able to stay up to date with the latest that Cisco has to offer, or any other certification to that matter of fact. One thing I wanted to point out here is that on the changes, we can see that it's called minor revisions. So this basically allows them to update these exams slowly, so making incremental changes that are not going to affect the whole exam, or mean that you're going to have to start from the very start again, looking at, let's say you're working on 6.0 and then boom, the new change come, and now you're totally lost because there's a whole new set of technologies that you now need to work on. So these incremental changes will allow somebody that maybe is working on the certification at the moment, or has already taken the exam like me, to be able to focus on the updates in incremental steps. So pick up on the newer things and not necessarily starting from scratch on the whole blueprint, essentially. So some things to point out here, if we look at the changes we can see we've got a comparison between version 6 and version 6.1 here. And we can see when we're looking at perimeter security and intrusion prevention, we can see that nothing has been changed essentially or taken out. But we have, however, now got what we call dynamic objects in there. And this is related to the firewall manager, or the FMC, the Firepower Management Center, as probably most will still know it as well. And dynamic objects is actually a way to dynamically update objects, and instead of having to redeploy changes to an FTD, again a managed device, those changes actually take effect straight away. So, and this works by API calls to the FMC. So let's say you have let's just do a little drawing at the bottom of this. So let's say we've got our FMC here, and we have our FTD. And again, for those that are listening on, I'm just drawing a rather rubbish diagram of an FMC and an FTD, but by all means do head over to my YouTube channel to check this lovely drawing out. So we have our FMC and our FTD. That communication happens when we've got managed devices, and the FMC manages those devices. So any change is usually made on the FMC, and that change is pushed into the managed devices, so the FTDs. Now, with dynamic objects, it allows us to use these objects in our access control lists, and dynamically, let's just say, for instance, we have a machine here that updates this FMC. It speaks to the FMC using APIs. So we've got APIs here, so it makes API calls. And let's say, for instance, we have a dynamic object that is in our access control list, and it's 192.168, I don't know, let's just say 10.1. And this dynamic object might be, say, allowing communication, say, from one PC or a subnet to this particular server. Let's just say that 192.168.10.1 is a server. So we've currently got access to this server, or we're pinging this server, let's just say. And now that IP address for this server is going to change, or let's just say something's changed, and now we want to update this. So usually this is going to be out on the internet, let's say, and whatever this machine is here makes an API call, and it basically changes the IP address. So let's just say now it changes it to 20.1, and it updates that address. And straight away, rather than having to go on to the FMC and deploy the changes, this change actually takes effect on the FTD straight away without having to deploy the changes again to the FTD. So that's in a really quick and succinct explanation. That is what dynamic objects are, and I haven't got any lab videos on that as of yet, but there is Cisco documentation on that as well, and I will be doing some lab videos as well on that, so do look out for that on my YouTube channel. So this is an update from that comes into effect with the newer versions as well of the firepowers that you will be working on, and we'll take a look at that after. We can see that we have secure connectivity and segmentation, and we can see that where we had in where we currently have in 6.0, we've got uplink and downlink MACsec. So we're looking at MACsec here, 802.18e. We can see actually this has been removed. This has been taken out, or will be taken out, in version 6.1. Now, this could be seen as a benefit actually for people that are maybe trying to set up labs in their own environment, and they didn't have the ability or physical switches to be able to configure things like MACsec before. So you don't have to worry about that no more. So that's going to be taken out. Moving on to identity management, information exchange, and access control. So this is focused around sort of identity services engine. And you can see when we look at EAP chaining now, we actually have an addition that's been added in. So we've got EAP chaining with TEAP, which is basically a version of EAP that came into effect from, we started to see customers wanting TEAP when Windows 10 was released back in 2020. And it's essentially in a way it's EAP chaining, so it allows us to basically perform user and machine authentication in one session or one request, if you like, instead of two separate sessions. So whereby some EAP methods we would have to maybe set up or configure ICE in a way where it'd do machine authentication first and then it'd do user authentication separately. EAP TEAP allows us to do that in one. So that's another great addition to the lab. So you're probably going to see that on the lab as well when configuring ICE with the machines in the lab as well. So do look out for that. Again, I don't really have any videos on that on my YouTube channel at the minute. It's all around EAP TLS. So I will look at getting some videos on my YouTube channel around that as well. We now have, and you know what, I'm actually surprised that when version 6.0 was released, there wasn't really there was not any reference actually, and there wasn't in any of the, I don't think the CCNP security content when I did it, any reference to this new addition to identity management, information exchange, and access control, and that's IBNS 2.0. And for those that don't know, IBNS 1.0 is basically the way you configure switch port. You configure the ports and switches today for being able to carry out or complete authentication when communicating with radio servers and ICE more specifically. And it's IBNS 2.0 or C3PL as it's known, is now introduced into 6.1. And this is interesting because it's actually going to change the IBNS 2.0 actually changes the way you configure switch ports to basically have those set up to communicate with ICE. So the configuration, the commands are actually totally different, and the way you configure IBNS 2.0 is totally different as well. Again, I do welcome this change. Actually, it's can take a little while actually to get your head around IBNS 2.0. So I do urge anybody that's maybe going to be looking at 6.1 to definitely take a look at IBNS 2.0 and see how it works. I do have an article on my website, networkwizkid.com, that covers IBNS 2.0 and actually breaks down each command as well. So do look out for that on my website, and I will try to do some more videos around this as well. But this is actually going to, this is an interesting addition now to the lab. And then lastly, we can see that under advanced threat protection and content security, we can see that we've basically now got Umbrella added into the lab. So on 6.0, there is no Umbrella in the lab. You don't have to worry about that. But now in the lab, there is the introduction to cloud security. So speaking of cloud security, we just spoke about the new certification that's coming in. So if you are going through your CCNP security, and will be around the time when that new cloud security certification comes out. The content covered in there will actually give you a good standing, or put you in good standing for this new section, or these new topics in the blueprint for the lab as well. So if you're not familiar with Umbrella, do consider maybe going through the content at least, or doing that certification exam once that comes out. And like I say, there is content out there where you can learn about Umbrella. And again, I am actually working on some content right now on my website that I do plan on releasing real soon, which is a full Umbrella course as well. So do keep a lookout for that if you are looking at learning a little bit more about Umbrella as well. And that course will include walkthrough labs. So that'll be me walking through labs in video form to show you exactly what the feature sets are, covering all of this stuff actually that's in the blueprint already. So that'll give you a good standing, especially when we're looking at virtual appliances. We're looking at, these are all sort of features within Umbrella as well, by the way. So that's it in terms of blueprint topics and what's changed. So we're only really seeing one thing removed right now. Now, if we look at the equipment, or the lab equipment that's recommended now, essentially what we can see is changes to versions, really. And we've got in ICE 6.0, we're using ICE 2.4. ICE has come a long way since 2.4, and you probably, well, you are going to see actually with all these new additions. So we're now going from ICE 2.4 to ICE 3.1.0, and we're going from DNAC 1.3.1 to 2.2.2.4. And from the FMC, or the Firepower Management Center, or Firewall Management Center, we're going from 6.2 to 7.1, and the same with the next gen IPS as well. We're going from 6.2 to 7.0. So with all these new versions, you're going to see, especially for FMC, FTD, and ICE, you're going to see new user interfaces. So if you are using these in a lab right now, what I would recommend is actually getting your devices upgraded to these upcoming versions, just so you can familiarize yourself with the new UI and the new features that exist within, such as the what we spoke about before with the if we just scroll back up here with the dynamic objects, and some more other features that are now in or come into play from version 7.0 with the firepower. And what you can actually do is you can actually flip back to the classic view as well. So if you are still working on 6.0 for the 6.0 security, CCIE Security Lab, and you are looking at the current versions that are recommended in that, then like I say, you can still work on what you need to do for that, but at least you'll then be prepared if you do need to look at doing the new version of the CCIE Security. You'll be prepared to work with that as well when that comes into play as well. So one good thing, especially those that are in the middle of taking the lab exam, or maybe have done a couple of attempts like me so far, the exam format hasn't changed, which is great. So that means the way that you do the first part of the exam and the implementation, that's all going to remain the same. It's just more so what you're going to be required to configure is going to change. So you're still going to have the first part where you go through the design, and then you're going to then jump on to the last part of the exam as well. So that's great. So if we just quickly look back on here now, we can see If you want, you can actually, we've just taken a look at the release notes. You can see the exam topics in its entirety, as well as the 6.1 learning matrix and the software and equipment list that we've also just got a quick look at as well. So if you do want to download any of that, that is available on the Learning Network. I will also include a link to that in my video as well for you to be able to download. But that's it really for the CCIE 6.1 practical exam, or the lab exam. That's the changes that are going to be coming into effect in October, or October the 20th this year. So I'd love to know what you think about the changes. Do you welcome the changes? Do you think the changes are good? Are you planning on waiting until that change, or are you going to continue with the current progress that you're making if you are currently going towards the 6.0 lab as well? Also, what do you think about the IBNS 2.0? I'd love to know what people think about that, because I've worked with that and I've actually deployed that for customers, but I'm not too sure how many other people have actually done that in industry as well. Is this something common that you're seeing now, or are you still typically working with IBNS 1.0 as well? I personally think that the changes are welcomed. I think that the fact that we're doing the changes in incremental steps really helps, especially those that are sort of in the middle of either 6.0 and are going to move across to 6.1 if they don't pass it in time. And I think it really helps stay up to date with the latest and greatest. So we can see that the introduction has brought forth Cisco Umbrella in the lab now. So if you have not worked with Umbrella and you might be looking at 6.1, like I said, do start looking at Cisco Umbrella. If you are currently working on 6.0 but not sure you're going to pass that one before 6.1, it's still worth looking at Umbrella as well. And if you are looking at the content, if you do want content, Cisco does have content around Cisco Umbrella, so do look out for that. If you are looking for a course, like I say, I am currently working on a course at the moment on my website. So if you want, or you are going to be interested in looking at that course and taking that course, then do reach out to me and let me know, because I am currently in the middle of doing that course now. So that's it really. That's all we're going to cover for this episode today. What I do want to do next time round is I want to take a look at the rest of the changes, what's coming to the new firepower exam, what's coming to the new ICE exam, ESA, WSA, VPN, and the automation as well. I think one thing that I would say actually before we close out is that with the lab and the dynamic objects, where we've not really seen any need to focus too much on automation in the security tracks, it might be worth just brushing up on automation for the upcoming changes and looking at some programming, especially around APIs, with the introduction of the dynamic objects as well. And like I say, once I do some labs on this, you'll actually see how it works, and not just look at my crappy little diagram that I did as well. So I would suggest actually looking at that as well. But that's it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in, whether you're listening on the podcast or whether you're watching on the video. As I say, if you are listening on the podcast, I do recommend you watch the video as well, so you can actually see the blueprint and the changes as well, and it'll make more sense to you. But until next time, thank you for listening and watching. Take care and stay safe.